The galaxy was in turmoil. The Xarthi Empire, a race of cold, calculating conquerors, had been tightening their grip across the stars for decades. Planets had fallen, systems had been obliterated, and the once proud United Galactic Federation, UGF, was now struggling to hold on to its remaining territories. In the face of such overwhelming odds, the Federation had one final hope. Desperation had led them to seek the help of an unknown species, the humans. In the heart of the Federation's last stronghold, Admiral Cal Voss stood at the command station of the war room. His face was worn, and his hands trembled as he watched the latest intelligence reports flood in. The Xarthi were advancing on their final defenses, and the Federation's fleets were buckling under the strain. The battle to protect the core systems seemed all but lost. "Admiral, the Sovereign's fury has just dropped out of fold space," came a voice from the comms officer. The announcement was greeted with both hope and skepticism. The ship, a human warship, had only been a rumor until now. The Federation had only heard whispers of its capabilities, but no one knew exactly what to expect. "Is the Sovereign's fury fully operational?" Cale asked, though he already had his doubts. "It should be, sir. Reports indicate the humans made a full jump to our location without any issues. We've received confirmation from the fleet commander." The room fell silent. It was a desperate gamble, the kind of last-ditch effort that only came when all other options were exhausted. The Sovereign's fury was humanity's one contribution to the war effort, a lone warship that had spent years developing in secret. Its arrival could either be the Federation's salvation or its final tomb. Cal's eyes fixed on the tactical display. In the vastness of space, an ominous cloud of enemy ships was slowly encircling their remaining fleets. The Xarthi were relentless, their massive warships like floating fortresses of destruction. There was little hope that any of the Federation's forces could hold the line much longer. And yet something shifted in the air as the comms officer sent a new update. The Sovereign's fury had arrived. Across the void, the ship appeared like a shadow against the stars, emerging from fold space with a thunderous crackle. Its sleek, angular design cut through the blackness like a predator in the night. The Federation fleet, already battered and bruised, had barely enough strength to recognize what was happening before the human ship took action. Without hesitation, the Sovereign's fury opened fire, its weapons sending arcs of bright energy coursing across the field. The Xarthi forces were slow to react, thinking the new ship was simply another desperate Federation vessel. That belief lasted for only a moment. The Sovereign's fury was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The first shot struck a Xarthi destroyer, its shields flickering and then shattering like glass under the intensity of the blast. The Xarthi ship was torn apart in a series of explosions that lit up the dark expanse. Within moments, a second and then a third Xarthi vessel fell, their hulking forms vanishing into wreckage. Admiral Voss blinked in disbelief as he watched the destruction unfold on the tactical screen. By the stars, what are they capable of? The Sovereign's fury didn't stop. It danced between enemy fire with graceful precision, unleashing devastating volleys from its weapons array, each blast delivering a staggering blow. The Xarthi fleet hesitated, confused by the sheer power and fluidity with which the human ship moved. Their instincts, honed over centuries of war, told them one thing: they were up against something entirely new. As the human warship continued its relentless assault, Voss felt a flicker of hope rise within him. This wasn't just a ship. This was a force. Humanity had arrived. The Sovereign's fury cut through the darkness of space with relentless speed, its every movement a dance of calculated destruction. As the alien ships faltered and fell, Captain Elara Thompson stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the glowing holographic map of the battlefield. She exuded a quiet confidence, the calm in her eyes belying the chaos that unfolded around her. The ship's crew worked in perfect harmony, a well-oiled machine honed through years of intense training and shared sacrifice. "We've got them on the ropes, Captain," reported Lieutenant Ramiro, her weapons officer. His hands flew over the console, sending bursts of energy from the Sovereign's Fury's advanced cannons that decimated Sarthi ships one after another. Thompson gave a curt nod, but didn't allow herself to be distracted. Keep the pressure up. We can't give them a moment to regroup. The bridge hummed with activity as orders were relayed and the battle raged outside. The Xarthi were reeling, their once dominant fleet now scrambling to adapt to the human ship's unpredictable style. Unlike the Xarthi, whose tactics relied on overwhelming firepower and regimented formations, the Sovereign's Fury wove in and out of the battlefield like a predator stalking its prey, striking at the most vulnerable points with surgical precision. The enemy didn't stand a chance. In a matter of minutes, the Sovereign's Fury had taken down 5 of the Xarthi's larger ships. The Federation fleet, previously on the defensive, watched in awe as the human warship fought with an intensity and ingenuity that made their own strategies look obsolete. Targeting their command ship, Lieutenant Ramiro called out, his voice sharp. "I have a clean shot." "Take it," Thompson commanded, her eyes narrowing as the holographic map displayed the Xarthi flagship, a colossal vessel that seemed invincible to all who had faced it, but not to the Sovereign's Fury. Ramiro's finger hovered over the console. The ship's main cannon, an energy weapon capable of leveling mountains, locked on to the flagship's vulnerable weak spot. He fired. A bright, blinding beam shot out from the warship's prow, its impact resonating like a thunderclap across the battlefield. The Xarthi flagship trembled under the force of the blast, its shields flaring brightly before collapsing entirely. The flagship's once proud form crumbled under the weight of humanity's firepower, bursting into flames as its core exploded, sending shockwaves through the surrounding ships. The remaining Xarthi vessels hesitated, their coordination faltering as their most powerful warship was reduced to debris. Admiral Voss watched the devastation unfold from his command center, a stunned silence falling over him and his staff. He had never seen anything like this. Humanity's power was undeniable. The Federation forces, galvanized by the sight of their new ally's success, began to push forward, attacking the Xarthi with newfound ferocity. It was no longer just a defense. It was an offense. But as the battle shifted in the Federation's favor, Thompson remained as focused as ever. The Sovereign's Fury was not done. The Xarthi were regrouping, now aware that their once unassailable position was in danger. A tactical retreat had already begun, but Thompson knew better than to let them escape unscathed. Engage all remaining targets. Don't give them the chance to escape, Thompson ordered. Her voice rang with authority, each syllable driving her crew to action. The Sovereign's Fury pursued the retreating Xarthi fleet, cutting through the dark void like a blade through flesh. The Federation fleet, following in its wake, launched a wave of smaller ships to mop up what remained of the scattered enemy forces. It was a show of precision, of efficiency, and above all, of humanity's will to fight. As the last Xarthi ships blinked out of existence, the silence in the aftermath was deafening. The Federation fleet had won. For the first time in years, the tide had turned. The Sovereign's Fury had proven itself to be more than just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's potential. Captain Thompson allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, but only a moment. The war was far from over. The Xarthi would regroup, and the battle would rage on. But now, humanity had shown that it could stand tall among the stars, and that would not be forgotten. "Prepare for the next wave," Thompson said softly, her gaze locked on the dark expanse beyond. This is only the beginning. The battle had taken an unexpected turn, but Captain Ilara Thompson knew this was just the beginning. The Sovereign's Fury had proven its might, and the Xarthi, momentarily stunned, would not sit idly by. As the Federation forces began to regroup and consolidate their position, the human warship remained vigilant, its engines humming with barely contained energy. Admiral Voss was still processing the scale of the victory when he sent a transmission to Thompson. His voice was filled with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "Captain Thompson, that was remarkable. We've never seen anything like it. But the Xarthi will regroup. We need to know if you can sustain this level of engagement." Thompson's face was calm as ever. Her crew was already preparing the ship for the next assault, her orders coming fast and clear. "We're ready, Admiral. We've only just begun." She wasn't just talking about the Sovereign's fury. She was talking about humanity. The human edge wasn't just about firepower or technology. It was something deeper, something intangible. It was the refusal to back down, the will to fight even when the odds seemed insurmountable. And in that, humanity had an advantage the Xarthi could never understand. While the Xarthi operated on cold precision, relying on rigid strategies, humans had always excelled in flexibility, in adapting on the fly. Thompson had known this from the beginning. No set tactic would ever work against a race that had the ability to think on their feet, to improvise in the face of overwhelming odds. As the remaining Xarthi ships began to regroup, their formations more scattered and erratic than before, Thompson instructed her crew to alter their strategy. No more predictable patterns. No more rote maneuvers. They would become as fluid as the battle itself. The crew of the Sovereign's Fury responded with immediate precision, adjusting the ship's systems in record time. The ship's shields were recalibrated to focus on the most likely points of attack, while secondary systems were given extra priority for evasive maneuvers. Lieutenant Ramiro looked up from his station. "Captain, we're getting reports of an incoming Xarthi assault. They're reinforcing with a larger fleet. But I don't think they're ready for us." Thompson nodded. She knew exactly what was coming. The Xarthi would rely on their superior numbers and concentrated firepower, an expected move, but they had not accounted for the unpredictability of human tactics. This was where the Sovereign's fury could shine. "All units, listen up," she said, her voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. "We're not going to engage them head-on. We'll scatter their forces, create chaos in their ranks. Then we take them down piece by piece. Focus on their weak spots, take out the smaller ships first, and work our way up. We're faster and more nimble than they are. Let's use that to our advantage." The crew nodded, eyes glinting with resolve. They had come together through trial and hardship, and now they understood their captain's vision. They would fight differently. They would fight smarter. The Sovereign's Fury took off in a rapid burst, the ship darting between the scattered Xarthi forces. The Xarthi ships, though more numerous, struggled to keep up with the unpredictable human maneuvers. The human warship weaved in and out of the Xarthi formations, evading their fire while picking off one ship after another. Each shot fired by the Sovereign's Fury was deliberate. The human ship's weapons were not just powerful, they were precise, each blast designed to disable rather than destroy, to create openings in the enemy's defenses. The Xarthi were forced to adapt, but their reflexes were no match for the ingenuity of their human counterparts. On the ground, the Federation forces watched in awe. It wasn't just the Sovereign's Fury that was winning them this battle. It was the sheer unpredictability and creativity that humanity had brought to the fight. The Xarthi had never encountered an enemy that fought like this. Their arrogance had led them to believe that overwhelming force would always win. But they had underestimated the resilience of humanity. The Federation fleet, now emboldened, began to press forward as well. With each victory, the humans had given them a taste of what was possible. For the first time in years, the Federation felt as though they had a fighting chance. On the Sovereign's Fury, Captain Thompson stood tall, her eyes focused on the battle ahead. She knew the Xarthi wouldn't give up easily. They would come back stronger, smarter, and angrier. But for the first time, the humans had shown that they could not only survive the onslaught of an empire, but defeat it with wit, speed, and an unyielding will to win. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Thompson muttered to herself as the Sovereign's Fury shifted course for the next wave. "We're fighting for the future." As the Xarthi fleet regrouped, Captain Elara Thompson knew that the next phase of the battle would be the most critical yet. The human warship had already inflicted severe damage, but the Xarthi were nothing if not relentless. Their response would be swift, Coordinated and merciless, the Sovereign's fury had given the Federation hope, but they were now walking on a razor's edge. The tactical display in front of Thompson blinked red as a fresh wave of Sarthi warships entered the battlefield. Their sleek, intimidating forms cut through the dark expanse like knives through paper. The Sarthi had called in their elite fleet, including their flagship, Vengeance, a ship that was legendary across the galaxy for its devastating weaponry and impenetrable shields. This was no longer a skirmish. It was a test of endurance and resolve. "Here they come," Lieutenant Ramiro said, his voice laced with caution as he monitored the approaching fleet. "Their dreadnought is pushing forward. It's Vengeance." Thompson's eyes narrowed. Vengeance was a beast, designed to crush all who stood before it. Its weapons were capable of reducing entire fleets to dust in seconds, and its armor was almost impervious. She had known this moment was coming, but that didn't make it any easier to face. "We can't back down now," Thompson muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "We'll hit them where it hurts." The Sovereign's fury adjusted its course, angling to intercept the oncoming Sarthi forces. It was still a ship of remarkable power, but it was also significantly outnumbered. The Sarthi, with their superior numbers and the firepower of Vengeance, had the advantage. For the first time in this battle, Thompson felt the weight of the conflict pressing on her. As the two forces collided, the Sovereign's fury fired a volley of energy beams that sliced through the dark. The Sarthi shields flared with each impact, but they absorbed the hits with little visible damage. In retaliation, the Sarthi unleashed a barrage of missiles that closed the distance between the ships in mere seconds. The Federation warship shuddered under the blows, the hull groaning as its shields strained against the onslaught. "We're taking hits, shields at 70%, shouted the tactical officer. "Hold them steady." Thompson barked, her voice unwavering. "We need to get close enough to strike their weak points." Despite the punishing barrage, Thompson knew the Sovereign's fury was still far more maneuverable than the lumbering Vengeance. The human warship dodged and weaved through the incoming fire, expertly dodging the Sarthi missiles with sharp, unpredictable movements. Lieutenant Ramiro's voice was tight with urgency. "Captain, Vengeance is charging its main cannon. It's targeting us." Thompson didn't hesitate. The Sovereign's fury was fast. But this would be the true test of its agility. Brace for impact. Full evasive maneuvers. The ship twisted on its axis, spiraling just in time as a massive planet-shaking beam shot out from Vengeance. The blast scorched the space where the Sovereign's fury had been only moments before, turning the void into a fiery expanse. But the human ship was already far away, evading the catastrophic blast by the narrowest of margins. The Sovereign's fury had just survived a near-fatal strike, but it was clear the Vengeance had the potential to tear it apart with a single shot if they didn't act fast. Thompson's heart raced, but her focus never wavered. She knew that to defeat the Vengeance, they needed to exploit its one vulnerability, its overwhelming size and sluggishness. While the Vengeance's weapons could lay waste to anything in their path, its maneuverability left much to be desired. "We need to distract it long enough to get in close," Thompson said, her eyes flicking over to the crew. "Ramiro, ready the secondary cannons. We'll take out its auxiliary weapons first. If we can cripple their support systems, we'll have a fighting chance." The crew nodded, and in a flash, the Sovereign's fury was back on the attack, darting beneath the enormous shadow of the Vengeance. The human ship unleashed a powerful burst from its side cannons, striking the Sarthi dreadnought's external weapon systems. The Vengeance roared in protest, but its return fire was slow, the damage already taking its toll. For the first time, the Sarthi flagship was showing signs of vulnerability. Its massive guns failed to charge as quickly, its shields flickering under the intensity of the assault. But just as Thompson felt a surge of hope, a new wave of Sarthi ships appeared from a nearby sector, reinforcing Vengeance. The Federation fleet was already stretched thin, and now the odds were starting to tip against them once again. "This is it," Thompson muttered under her breath, her hands gripping the command console. We either win this, or we fight with everything we got. As the Federation forces rallied behind the Sovereign's fury, the turning point was clear. Humanity's resilience was the last thing the Xarthi had underestimated. Even facing overwhelming firepower, humanity refused to give in. And the Sovereign's fury would show them that this was just the beginning of the end for the Xarthi Empire. The tide of battle had shifted once again. But this time, it felt like the final test. The Sovereign's fury had made its mark, inflicting severe damage on the Xarthi flagship, Vengeance. However, the Xarthi were a proud, unyielding species, and their reinforcements were now entering the fray, an overwhelming force that threatened to crush the Federation's last hope. Captain Ilara Thompson stood at the helm, her mind racing as she processed the ever-changing situation. Captain, Lieutenant Ramiro's voice broke through her thoughts. We've got a new problem. A dozen more Xarthi warships just dropped out of Fold space, and they're locking in on our position. Thompson's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. We knew this was coming. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We need to cripple Vengeance before their reinforcements can engage. The Sovereign's fury was surrounded on all sides, its hull shuddering from impacts as the Xarthi ships began to close in. The Federation fleet was doing what they could, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The pressure was mounting. The Vengeance was still operational, its heavy cannons charging for another shot that would undoubtedly decimate the Sovereign's fury if it landed. Shields are at 50%, the tactical officer reported, and our main weapon systems are offline. We need more time, Captain. Time was the one thing they didn't have. With each passing second, the Xarthi encircled the human warship more tightly, and Thompson's options were quickly narrowing. Ramiro, how long until the secondary weapons are fully charged? 30 seconds, Captain. Good enough, Thompson replied, her voice ice-cold. Deploy the decoy drones, and lead them in. I want them to focus on those while we make our run at Vengeance. The crew snapped into action, their training kicking in. The decoy drones, small, fast-moving ships with limited firepower, but capable of drawing enemy attention, launched from the Sovereign's fury with speed. The Xarthi, predictably, shifted their focus toward the drones, their guns pivoting as they tried to destroy the distractions. Thompson watched closely, gauging the movements of the Xarthi fleet. The decoys had worked, but the clock was ticking. Every move the Sovereign's fury made had to count. Now, Thompson barked, take us in. With a controlled but desperate push, the Sovereign's fury surged forward, dodging a barrage of incoming missiles and energy blasts. The warship moved with the fluidity of a predator, weaving through enemy fire and cutting toward the weakened side of the Vengeance. Ramiro's voice was sharp. Secondary cannons charge. Weapons are online. Fire at will, Thompson ordered. The Sovereign's fury unleashed a storm of energy from its secondary weapons, each strike finding its mark. The first few shots hit the Vengeance's shields, testing their strength. The next round of blasts struck deeper, damaging critical systems, and creating a series of cascading explosions across the Xarthi flagship. But the Vengeance's shields held. For now. Their main weapons are offline. Ramiro shouted, "We've got them." A cheer went up from the crew, but Thompson remained calm. She knew the battle was far from over. The Vengeance was far from finished, and the Xarthi were regrouping quickly. "Don't get complacent," she snapped. "Keep the pressure on, Vengeance. We need to cripple their engines, or this will drag out forever." As the Sovereign's fury continued its assault, Thompson's focus shifted to the Federation fleet. They had already lost a significant number of ships in the opening hours of the battle, but they were still holding on. The human warship's unrelenting drive had inspired a spark of hope in the Federation forces. The Xarthi were powerful, yes, but humanity had shown them that they were more than just another species to be subjugated. They were capable of taking on an empire that had once seemed unstoppable. As the Vengeance struggled to regroup, Thompson realized that the key to victory lay in something far more than firepower. It was the will to fight, the resilience that humans had shown when faced with an enemy who saw them as insignificant. The Sovereign's fury wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of the unwavering spirit of humanity. "Admiral Voss," Thompson called over the comms, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "This battle isn't over. We've made a dent, but we need the rest of the fleet to focus their fire on Vengeance's engines. If we don't stop it now, we'll all be finished." The transmission crackled as Voss responded, his voice filled with determination. "Understood, Captain. We'll assist with all remaining firepower. Hold steady." With the Federation's remaining forces now coordinating with the Sovereign's fury, the final push began. The Xarthi flagship was wounded, vulnerable, but still dangerous. The battle for control of the stars would come down to one final decisive blow. The Sovereign's fury and the Federation fleet were locked in a relentless battle with the Xarthi, their strength and resolve tested to the limits. The Xarthi flagship, Vengeance, despite the damage it had taken, was still a formidable force, and it wasn't ready to surrender. Captain Ilara Thompson stood resolutely at the helm of her ship, watching the holographic battlefield unfold before her. The Federation fleet was slowly, but surely, closing in on their target, the damaged Vengeance now the focus of all their efforts. "Captain," Lieutenant Ramiro called out, his voice tense. "We've disabled their main cannons, but their auxiliary systems are still operational. Vengeance is trying to reconfigure its shields to counter our attacks." Thompson didn't need to hear more. She knew what had to be done. "Ramiro, give me a burst of concentrated fire on their aft engines. If we can't break their shields, we'll force them into a retreat." "Aye, Captain," he replied, his fingers flying across the console. The Sovereign's fury turned sharply, its weapons primed and ready. The human warship surged forward with brutal speed, closing the distance between them and the Vengeance. Only a few kilometers now separated them. The Federation fleet, though battered, was moving in lockstep behind the Sovereign's fury, each ship taking aim at the enemy flagship. The coordination was flawless, a testament to the human ingenuity and their desire to end this war once and for all. "Target locked," Ramiro said, firing in 3, 2, 1. The Sovereign's fury unleashed a devastating barrage of concentrated firepower, striking the Vengeance's rear engines. The explosion was cataclysmic. Fire erupted from the back of the Xarthi flagship, and a series of secondary explosions followed, rattling the enormous warship. It was staggering, faltering in the void as its propulsion systems failed, and for the first time, the once unstoppable Vengeance was on the defensive. "Direct hit. Their engines are offline," Ramiro shouted. "They're not moving." Thompson felt a surge of triumph, but she wasn't finished yet. "Finish them," she ordered, her voice as sharp as a blade. "We can't let them regroup." The Federation fleet closed in on the crippled Vengeance, pouring everything they had left into the flying ship. The Xarthi crew, desperate, began to fire back, but their energy was misdirected. Their shields were weakening, and their weapons had lost much of their punch. The human forces were relentless, pounding Vengeance with everything they had. Every shot fired by the Sovereign's fury and the Federation ships was a declaration that humanity wouldn't back down, no matter the cost. The Xarthi flagship was now a shadow of its former self, its once imposing form drifting helplessly in space. Fires raged across its surface, and its weak attempts at counterattack only hastened its demise. It wasn't just a military loss for the Xarthi. It was a symbol of their arrogance and underestimation of the human spirit. The Federation's victory wasn't just about firepower. It was about a new kind of war, one where ingenuity, resilience, and unity could overcome overwhelming odds. "Admiral Voss," Thompson said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We need to finish this. Their command structure is broken, but if we leave them any chance to escape, they'll return with a vengeance." "Understood, Captain," Voss responded, his voice crisp over the comm. "We'll focus everything on vengeance. Prepare for a final push." The final push came faster than anyone had anticipated. With the Xarthi flagship incapacitated, the Federation forces surged forward, converging on the once mighty vengeance. It no longer had the power to retaliate in any meaningful way. The human warships launched their final salvos, sending waves of energy that shredded the remnants of the Xarthi flagship. One final explosion rocked the ship. And then, silence. The once imposing vengeance was nothing more than a drifting wreck, its fate sealed. Thompson allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction as she watched the results of their relentless effort unfold on the screen in front of her. The Xarthi had fallen. But even as the Federation forces celebrated, Thompson knew better than to assume victory was final. The Xarthi were not a species to let a defeat go unpunished. The battle may have been won, but the war? That was still a question left unanswered. "Prepare for recovery operations," she said, her voice calm despite the adrenaline that still thrummed through her veins. "This fight is over, but the war is far from finished." Her crew moved swiftly, securing the battlefield and ensuring that the Sovereign's fury was ready for whatever came next. Captain Thompson had proven to the galaxy that humanity could stand up to the galaxy's greatest powers. And that was a lesson the Xarthi would not forget. The Federation was stronger now, united in a way it had never been before. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's potential, and in the heart of space, a new chapter was being written, one where Earth's defenders would be a force to be reckoned with. But for now, the Federation could savor this victory. They had earned it, against all odds. The wreckage of the Vengeance drifted slowly through the void, the mighty flagship now nothing more than a floating hulk. The Federation fleet had successfully crippled the Xarthi's pride and joy, but Captain Elara Thompson knew that this victory was only the first step in a much larger war. The Xarthi were wounded, yes, but not defeated, and they had many allies. The crew of the Sovereign's Fury took a moment to catch their breath. The bridge was alive with activity, but the energy was different now. The tension had been replaced with cautious relief. For the first time in weeks, they weren't on the defensive. They had struck the enemy down. But Captain Thompson couldn't let herself relax. She knew that this calm wouldn't last. "Damage report," she called, her voice cutting through the buzz of the bridge. "Shields are down to 55%. Lieutenant Ramiro replied, his fingers flying across the console. "Hull integrity is holding at 80%, but we've suffered some minor damage to the forward sections. Nothing we can't repair, but we're not in perfect condition." Thompson nodded, satisfied with the assessment. "Understood. We'll need to conduct repairs as soon as we're clear of the battlefield. Keep an eye on our scanners. Any sign of additional Xarthi ships?" "We've got a few scattered signals," Ramiro said, his brow furrowing. "Some of them are picking up on the fringes of the sector. Could be stragglers, or it could be reinforcements. They're not moving toward us yet." "Good," Thompson said. "Let's keep it that way." While her crew worked diligently to monitor the situation, Thompson's thoughts were elsewhere. The Federation had achieved a major victory, but one battle was not enough to turn the tide of a war. The Xarthi would come back. They always did. And with their empire stretched across dozens of systems, it wasn't likely they'd be willing to surrender easily. "Captain, I'm picking up a new transmission from Admiral Voss," Lieutenant Commander Drake reported. "Put it through," Thompson said, her tone sharp. The holographic projection of Admiral Voss flickered to life before her. His face was drawn, but there was an unmistakable sense of pride in his eyes. "Captain Thompson, I won't waste your time. The Federation is in your debt." That was a flawless strike, and we're already seeing the shift in the Xarthi's posture. "We've detected movement in their fleets. We believe they're considering retreating." Thompson raised an eyebrow. "Retreating? After everything they've thrown at us?" "Yes, but not completely," Voss continued. "They've suffered a serious blow to their command structure. Their forces are fractured, and their leadership is scrambling. However, they have reinforcements on the way, and we can't let them regroup. Thompson's jaw tightened. I don't expect them to give up that easily. What's the next step? We're sending a delegation to negotiate, but I want to make something clear. The Xarthi will not stop at one defeat. They'll rebuild, regroup, and retaliate with everything they have. We need to prepare for another round, Captain. We're ready, Thompson said firmly, her eyes steely. I'll make sure we're prepared for whatever they throw at us next. But the Federation needs to keep pushing. We can't let this moment of weakness slip by. Agreed, Voss said, nodding. We'll be dispatching reinforcements to your location. The Sovereign's fury will remain the spearhead of this assault. Don't give them any breathing room. Understood, Admiral, Thompson replied, her mind already racing through the tactical possibilities. The transmission ended, and the quiet of space returned. The Federation had broken through, but the enemy had not been defeated. Thompson's thoughts shifted back to her crew, who were working hard to ensure the Sovereign's fury was ready for the next challenge. They had been through hell together, and each of them was aware that the war was far from over. Lieutenant Ramiro, she called out, her voice calm but urgent, I want you to begin repairs on the forward sections. We're going to need to be at full strength if the Xarthi come back. Aye, Captain, Ramiro said, already relaying the orders. The crew continued their work, their movements swift and coordinated. Thompson couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for them. They had come together in the face of overwhelming odds, and now they were a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit. But she couldn't afford to dwell on that now. There were bigger challenges ahead. She turned to Lieutenant Commander Drake, who had been scanning the comms for any new transmissions. What's the status on the enemy reinforcements? She asked. Nothing substantial yet, Drake replied, but we're expecting them within a few hours. The Xarthi are reassembling their fleets. It's only a matter of time before they come for us again. Thompson stared out at the wreckage of vengeance, now a silent reminder of what humanity was capable of. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. And this time, the Sovereign's fury and her crew wouldn't stop until the Xarthi Empire was nothing more than a memory. The next fight would be even more brutal, but they would be ready. Get ready, everyone, she said, her voice firm and steady. This is just the beginning. The Sovereign's fury sat poised in the silence of space, the wreckage of the Vengeance drifting quietly behind them. Captain Ilara Thompson stood at the helm, her mind focused on the coming storm. The Federation had made a statement, one that echoed across the galaxy, but it was only the beginning. The Xarthi had tasted defeat, but their thirst for vengeance was far from quenched. And now, humanity was thrust into a new phase of the war. Captain, reinforcements are arriving. Lieutenant Ramiro's voice interrupted her thoughts. We've got 3 Federation battleships, along with several smaller cruisers, moving into position. They'll be in range in less than 30 minutes. Thompson nodded, not allowing herself to be distracted by the tactical readouts. They needed to be ready for what was coming, and that meant maintaining absolute focus. Good. Let's get the fleet organized, she said. We won't be caught off guard again. Prepare for the worst. Understood, Ramiro replied, already sending out orders to the other ships in the fleet. Thompson's gaze shifted to the starfield ahead. The Federation's forces were bolstered by the Sovereign's fury's victory, but she knew that the Xarthi would not surrender without a bloody fight. The alien empire would lick its wounds, regroup, and return with a vengeance, and they had powerful allies among the galactic factions. The real challenge was coming, the final clash to determine the fate of the galaxy. Captain, we've got an incoming transmission from the Federation High Command, Lieutenant Commander Drake called out. Patch it through, Thompson replied, her voice unwavering. The face of Admiral Voss flickered to life on the holographic display. The lines of age and worry were heavy on his face, but there was an undeniable fire in his eyes. Captain Thompson, your victory over the Vengeance has turned the tide of this war. But we must remain vigilant. The Xarthi are not alone, and their alliances run deep. Thompson straightened, knowing what was coming. What do you need from us, Admiral? You and the Sovereign's Fury will be tasked with holding the front lines. We've identified a potential Xarthi fleet rallying point just beyond the Nebula Nebrix. If we can take it, we'll have a significant strategic advantage in the sector. But you'll need to move quickly before they can fortify. We'll be ready, Thompson said firmly. I'll make sure the fleet is prepared. We're not letting them regroup. I'm confident in you, Captain, Voss said, his gaze steady. You've proven that humanity will stand against them. But this will be our final push. We need to break their power once and for all. The transmission ended, and the weight of his words lingered in the air. Thompson knew this was it. This would be the defining moment of the war. The Xarthi had been forced into a corner, but their power was far from gone. This mission would either cripple their forces or give them the chance to strike back harder than ever. Humanity had no choice but to win. Status report on the fleet, Ramiro, Thompson said. Federation ships are aligning now, Captain. We've got 3 battleships, 8 cruisers, and 4 destroyers in position. They're ready for deployment. We're still waiting for the Phoenix and Defender to arrive, but they're on track. Thompson studied the star maps. The Vengeance was no longer a threat, but the Xarthi were regrouping fast. Their reinforcements would be formidable. But now, for the first time, the Federation fleet stood united with a sense of purpose they hadn't had before. The Xarthi were strong, but they had underestimated humanity's resolve. Begin the operation, Thompson ordered. We're moving out to the Nebrix sector now. Time is our enemy. The engines of the Sovereign's Fury roared to life as the ship surged forward, the rest of the Federation fleet following in tight formation. The stars seemed to blink at them, distant and indifferent, as they moved toward the heart of enemy space. Thompson stood at the command center, watching as her crew readied themselves for the mission ahead. She could feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but it was a weight she would carry proudly. This was their moment. Humanity had faced impossible odds, and now, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, they would show the Xarthi what it truly meant to face the unyielding spirit of mankind. The Sovereign's Fury cut through the darkness, a beacon of humanity's strength, and the Federation fleet followed in its wake, ready for whatever came next. This battle would decide everything: their future, their freedom, and their place in the galaxy. And as Captain Thompson gazed out at the endless expanse of stars, she felt a sense of clarity. The Xarthi might have underestimated them once, but they would never make that mistake again. The war wasn't over, but humanity had made its mark.